In the southeast portion of Arizona, there is a mountain range called the Chiricahuas. Chiri is an Indian word for turkey. Chiricahua is the place of turkeys. These mountains had a great many trees at one time. Big, tall trees, magnificent trees that had been here for hundreds of years. And on the slopes towards the bottom of the mountain, there was a great deal of grasses and quite a lot of bushes, especially on the northern side of the hills. And at the foot of the mountains, there was a stream called Turkey Creek. And this stream ran all year long with clear water. The reason for this is that the mountains were like sponges. And when the rains came, the rain, as it hit the ground, it went in, soaked into the ground, went in following the roots of the trees and following the roots of the grasses. And the whole mountain became wet. And as the mountain became so wet at the foot of the mountain that the water weeped out into the stream. And the stream was clear water, and it held fish. And there was a heron that would stand at the side of the stream waiting for his meal, because a fish would come along, or fish or a frog, and he would be satisfied. And in the hills, there were mountain lions and bobcats and deer and black bear, cotimundis, bobtail cats, and many other animals. And these animals are not visible in the picture because they generally didn't show themselves until late in the evening or early morning. In the 1800s, men came out here to this part of the world and they discovered copper. And copper was a very valuable metal. And they started mining the copper. And when they mined the copper, they had to dig holes in the earth, in the sides of hills, and they had to shore up the tunnels. So they came to the Chiricahuas and cut down the trees. There were 16 sawmills in the late 1800s, or mid to late 1800s, in the Chiricahuas. And as they cut the trees down, the condition on the mountain changed. It became lighter and more grassy for a short period of time. And when the men saw that it was grassy, they said, let's put animals on the mountain. Let's graze the mountain. So they sent sheep and cattle up into the hills. And the sheep and the cattle naturally ate all the grasses. And for a short period of time, there was lots of money coming in from the copper and lots of money coming in from the cattle and the sheep. But the animals were very sad because their habitat had changed and the earth itself changed. The mountain changed. The mountain was weeping dirt because the dirt would erode off the mountain and it would wash down the hills with the rains and it would go into the streams. And the streams began down cutting. And the mountain no longer was a sponge because no longer did the water seep into the ground and was held into the ground because there were no trees and there was no grass to be able to allow the water to penetrate into the hills. So the hills dried up, the stream dried up, and the animals went away or died. One day, the situation on the mountain started to change. A lady who had been living in a big city came to live in the Chiricahua Mountains. She looked up into the hills and said, "It is beautiful. These hills are beautiful, but they are bare. I don't see any grasses. What do the cows eat?" she thought. "Do they eat rocks?" And then she noticed that the rains came mostly during the summer monsoon rainy season. And they came very hard and fast and all at once. And when the rains hit the ground, they didn't soak into the ground, but they began washing off the sides of the hills at quite a speed and carrying with them a lot of dirt, so that there were very deeply eroded places on the hillsides. This lady thought, "I wonder what would happen if we plugged up those washes, if we could slow the water down," because she realized that it was so necessary to have water throughout the whole year. And at this point, the water only ran in the streams during the rainy season. And then one day, a group of workers from Mexico came and said, "We have been building these small rock dams for ages. Our fathers built them, our grandfathers built them, and our grandfathers' grandfathers built them. And they knew how to build these rock dams. So they built them. For 20 years they built them. And in 20 years they had 20,000 small rock dams in this mountainside." What happened was the mountain started keeping the soil, retaining the soil. These little rock dams filled up behind them with dirt. That point held more water. The grasses came back, and the mountain became once again a sponge. As the mountain became a sponge, there were more trees that started to grow, and down at the foot of the mountain, the stream, which was called Turkey Creek, began to flow for many months longer. And the water was clean, and it no longer held great quantities of earth in it. And the heron started to see if there were fish again in the stream and in the ponds. And the bears and animals started to come back to this area. And the birds and the turkeys came back. And the Chiricahuas were once again the Chiricahua Mountains that they had been ages ago.